Hello, good evening, everyone. Welcome to Business Live. Coming up in this bulletin, accounting firm PwC Ghana reveals Ghana's economy remains seriously exposed to commodity price volatility despite the recent stability, as it warns recent tax reforms will hurt the revenue target. We are live with them. Also in this bulletin, Chamber of Agribusiness warns Ghana could lose $21.3 billion investment as Benin steps up as more attractive destination to foreign investors. Plus, Africa Center for Energy Policy, ACEP, proposes power sector reforms to deal with some systemic challenges that have crippled the effectiveness of the Energy Sector Levy Act.
Some of the issues that we've raised around the management and then the allocation of funds around ESLA still begs a lot of question around how maybe the ESLA PLC and those other issues introduce a lot of costs around the management of it.
We have details of these and more lined up for you. Please stay on. Pleasure, it could be time to join us. I am Pius Kojobaka, and looking at our stories. Accounting firm PwC Ghana says the economy remains highly vulnerable to fluctuations in global commodity prices despite signs of recent economic stability. The firm has, however, cautioned that recent tax cuts could negatively impact revenue mobilization this year. We have more for you in this report.
The revelation was captured in the West African Economic Outlook report put together by the accounting firm. PwC Ghana in the report noted that their forecast was based on the fact that the current recovery is largely based on gold price rally. And looking at the current development with the price, things could turn for the worse for the country. Thus, PwC Ghana in the report argued that it could lead to our buffers being tested due to these expected shocks, arguing that continuous discipline might be needed. IMF, in their staff report, recently raised similar concerns about how the economy is seriously exposed to external shocks. The accounting firm in the report again warned that the recent tax cuts and levies being reviewed could hit revenue badly this year. For some, the revelation could be seen as not so good for the economy going forward, as you understand that revenue numbers for last year was also not good. And this could affect government expenditure for this year, as well as our debt situation.
All right, this evening we also learned in Ghana could lose up to $21.3 billion in economic value and as many as 435,000 jobs over the next 5 years if urgent policy action is not taken to counter diversifying or competition from neighboring countries. And that's according to the Chamber of Agribusiness Ghana, warning that. We have more for you as well in this report.
Ghana risks losing up to $21.3 billion in economic value and as many as 435,000 jobs over the next 5 years if urgent policy action is not taken. This warning comes from the Chamber of Agribusiness Ghana following Benin's launch of an aggressive investor attraction strategy aimed at manufacturers across the West African sub-region. In a media statement dated February 9th, the chamber indicates that Ghana is already losing ground, with factories relocating or scaling down operations in favor of countries offering lower taxes, cheaper electricity, and faster business processes. According to the Chamber's technical analysis, between 395 and 555 factories could relocate or shut down between 2026 or 2030, with agro-processing accounting for about 40% of the affected facilities. The chamber also projects between $4 and $6.6 billion in foreign direct investment could be diverted from Ghana alongside declining tax revenues and rising unemployment. It warns that the situation is no longer theoretical, pointing to ongoing factory closures and the migration of skilled professionals.
To the energy sector now, and the African Center for Energy Policy, ACEP, is proposing power sector reforms to deal with some systemic challenges that have crippled the effectiveness of the Energy Sector Levy Act, despite several amendments by government in the last decade of its implementation. The think tank has noted structural problems hindering effective management, noting how its securitization and indefinite extension have caused a failure to service the principal energy sector debt. Policy lead for climate and green transition at ACEP, Dr. Charles Ofori, says there is urgent need for necessary interventions.
ESLA came in 2015 and it's been about 10 years, has gone through a lot of amendments, and the recent repeal and then the consolidation and then the addition of levies. You could see also that it went through a lot of changes, even in terms of management. I applaud the transparency around reporting and for us to see what funds or how the funds have been used for and how the funds have been allocated, where it has been allocated. But I think that it's falls short of addressing various systemic issues that plague the power sector, which we need to really do a good reform out of it. I've seen some interventions that are coming from governments around procurement and other key interventions within the sector. But I think there's more room for improvement, and it gets to show that some of the issues that we've raised around the management and then the allocation of funds around ESLA still begs a lot of question around how maybe the ESLA PLC and those other issues introduce a lot of costs around the management of it, and we are happy to see the consolidation of the funds into one window to deal with the how do you call it, with the debts and then the shortfalls management of it.
And beyond the reforms, he suggested prudent means of tackling the year-on losses in the sector.
It has been restructured several times, and I mean, it's not really about restructuring the levy, it's about dealing with systemic issues. And as I mentioned, 2015, when ESLA was introduced, we had losses of about 23%, I think distribution losses of 23%. 2025, March, thereabouts, we are recording losses in the 30s, right? So what kind of restructuring can you still do? What kind of new arrangements can you still do? How much can you still add to defray, without dealing with the losses? You still recover, you still get a lot of under recoveries, you still get a lot of structural defects, so in the phase where structural issues are not dealt with, you will continue to do restructuring, but that may not necessarily solve the power sector challenges.
Now, Chief Executive of the Chamber of Oil Marketing Companies, Dr. Rivising Opong, is renewing calls for government to develop a plan for energy sovereignty. According to him, Ghana and other African countries have the advantage to use their existing resources to advance sovereignty in energy to support industrialization. Dr. Opong has been speaking to journalists in an interview after delivering a public lecture under the theme, Energy Sovereignty in the Context of the Global Energy Transition. Here's a report.
The lecture aims to enlighten the public on the global policy and the need for energy transition and sovereignty. According to the Chief Executive of the Chamber for Oil Marketing Companies, Dr. Rivising Opong, Africa requires substantial investment in the sector in order to transition to sustainable energy. He believes that a deliberate plan by various governments will accelerate the course for sovereignty in energy.
Africa has a long way to go as far as energy security is concerned, and I think that's what we've been preaching for some years now. But it's high time we really consider the importance of energy sovereignty. And all that we are seeing around this is that being sovereign as far as energy is concerned, that you owning your source of energy, you owning how you produce it, and you own how you even utilize it. And that is what we've seen today into this lecture, how the Asian market, the American market, and also even the European market, in terms of energy, portrays.
He also used the occasion to make a case for cleaner forms of cooking rather than the use of outdated traditional methods, which has become harmful to many women.
I also touched on clean cooking because one of the components of the energy transition in a global space has to do with the death coming from the CO2 emission. But we also want to say that there are 3-4 times more deaths coming from unclean cooking, unsafe cooking in Africa, which probably nobody will talk about it. And at the same time, probably in Asia, India specifically. And if you have access to energy that you produce, if you have access to energy that you own and utilize, all this will be a question of yesterday.
The lecture was hosted by the Ghana Energy Media Group. It also assembled international industry experts for a panel discussion on the issue.
More within the energy sector, and the Energy Commission has taken a step further to find solutions to loopholes in dealing with standards of electrical appliances at the various ports and entry points. The move follows a report that Ghana's market has been flooded with substandard electrical items due to challenges with personnel and standard warehouse facilities to hold the materials. Board Chairman of the Commission, Professor John Gachi, has been briefing the media after a tour of some inspection sites at the Tema port. Here's a report.
The tour was aimed at giving the board a first-hand information on the various inspection activities whenever electrical appliances are imported. According to the officers in charge, the lack of a standard warehouse facility to detain substandard materials poses a threat to their operations. Board Chairman Professor John Gachi hinted that all efforts will be made to find a lasting solution to the challenge.
Proper fees were not paid. Some of the items which were detained have to go to the same person who imported the items as a warehouse, and the Commission doesn't have a clear oversight regarding those items. That creates a lot of problems for us. We also realize that the distinction between commercial import and import for personal effect is fluid. People are importing huge number of items in the name of personal use, and that is not clarified. So we are here to see things for ourselves. In addition to that, the issue of warehouse to detain items was prominent in the report. So we are here to see and then to hear from the operatives here to see what solutions we can prefer to be able to address these issues.
He has therefore highlighted the negative impact of having such materials in the market as a country.
If you allow items which do not fall within the standard, which are not labeled, that means that they are not complying to the market. It means people will get electrical wires that are not within the standard. That will be seeing more, fires, etc. within the country. If people buy EV batteries, which are not within the standard and that they are not properly in compliance with the law, what it means that we are endangering people who will be using those items and then the public in general.
The Energy Commission Inspectorate Division is expected to be revamped to ensure importers are operating with the law.
You're still watching Business Life. We have more stories for you lined up for you after this quick break. Please stay on. Hello, welcome back to Business Life. Tenants have raised growing concerns over the demand for excessive rent advance, a practice they say places significant financial pressure on households. In response, Cabinet has approved a new rent bill awaiting parliamentary passage. The proposed law seeks to replace the 1963 Rent Act, which the Rent Control Department describes as outmoded and ineffective in addressing current housing challenges. There is more in the following report.
Concerns are mounting among tenants over the practice of demanding more than a year's rent in advance, which many say is taking a heavy toll on their finances. These concerns come at a time when Cabinet has approved a new rent bill aimed at reforming Ghana's rental housing sector. Tenants say exorbitant rent charges, among others, forces them to exhaust their savings simply to secure accommodation.
This 2 years rent is too much. You understand? Some people are selling pure water, some people are hawking. How can they afford 2 years straight up? So government should look into it. If 3 months, if possible monthly or 6 months, at least it will help people.
The landlord or landwoman, you have to take it by 1 month to 6 months. That one is okay, because or 6 months to 1 year, it be okay. Because if you do a small job, you can't get 2 years rent.
Now they say the rent for a Chema house self-contained some 1,000 Ghana, some 500. So what can a small boy at the graduate where he can get 1,000 Ghana for 2 years? How?
In response to these concerns, the Public Relations Officer of the Rent Control Department, Emmanuel Posu, has outlined key areas the proposed rent bill seeks to address. He explained that the existing Rent Act of 1963 is outmoded and does not deal with the current challenges as highlighted by some tenants.
We are proposing an independent assessment committee. People have the notion that rent officers alone cannot do the job. So now let's form a committee which will comprise landlords, a rep of Landlords Association, a rep of Tenants Association, any developer or surveyor within a district. It's going to be a district by district assessment committees. So that all these professionals will meet as and when to determine the rent that a tenant will pay. The most important thing is that the 1963 law is outmoded, and there are features or new features in the rental industry, which we have to move with time.
One controversial provision in the proposed bill is the criminalization of both landlords and tenants who engage in illegal rent advance agreements. Although many tenants are not in favor of this, the Rent Control Department are of the view that strict sanctions, including fines and other penalties, will discourage collusion and strengthen compliance.
We are capping it from monthly up to a maximum of 1 year. If you, the tenant, go to pay more than 2 years, you contravene the law. And if the landlord collects more than that stipulated amount or duration, the landlord also commit an offense against the law.
With Parliament expected to consider the bill in the coming months, many tenants are hopeful the proposed bill will bring lasting relief to Ghana's strained rental housing market. But in all of these, enforcement will be key. For Joy Business, Sarah Atiemo's report read to you.
The strategic custodian for communications at Amahoro Coalition, Mercy Kisiwa Frimpong, is calling for urgent policy reforms to help businesses employ and partner with displaced persons and host communities. Speaking in an interview, she says improving access to national identification for refugees is key to unlocking their economic integration and expanding Ghana's talent pool.
According to the strategic custodian for communications at Amahoro Coalition, access to the Ghana card remains a major barrier, preventing displaced persons from fully participating in the economy. She explains that without national identification, refugees are unable to open bank accounts, access pension schemes, or formally engage with employers.
The policy reform that we need to work on is how people who have experienced displacement or refugees can access the Ghana card, because without the Ghana card, you cannot really integrate. So without the Ghana card, you cannot get SNIT, you cannot get Tier 2, you cannot get a bank account. There are some places you cannot even get a SIM card to communicate, right? So making it easier and accessible for people who have experienced displacement to be able to access the Ghana card is the starting point for them to be economically integrated into the country.
Speaking further, the principal strategic custodian for growth at the Amahoro Coalition, Batsheba Asati, says the private sector cannot afford to feel disconnected from displacement challenges. She notes that instability in parts of the Sahel affects regional investment risk, disrupt trade corridors, and has direct implications for Ghana's economic stability.
Companies can feel very removed from the displacement crisis. And one of the things is that research has shown that countries that go into conflict, if they're not properly rebuilt, they'll go back into conflict every 15 years. But then the other thing is, for a country like Ghana that's very stable, why should the private sector here care about refugees or political stability? It's because Ghana is connected to the Sahel region. If there's tension in the Sahel region and conflict, which so far has displaced millions of refugees, what it means for the private sector here is that, one, risk is often priced regionally. So people can look at Africa or West Africa as a region and look at, like, this region is risky, not because there's conflict in Ghana, but because there's conflict in the region. Many displaced people have skills. They actually don't want to just sit around and be recipients of aid. They want to be able to gain opportunities to rebuild their lives. In Kenya, one of the examples we see is refugees trying to even get, like, KRA. KRA is the Kenya Revenue Authority tax pin. so that when they get a job, they can pay taxes and contribute to the economy.
Amahoro Coalition is urging closer collaboration between government agencies and the private sector, saying inclusive employment policies are not only a humanitarian necessity, but a strategic business decision for Ghana's economic resilience.
In a vibrant ceremony at Techiman's Bono Chempem Hall, 120 young graduates, most of them women, stepped into new futures today as the Agrico Hub Activate program celebrated its first graduating cohorts. Armed with practical skills in cashew production, poultry farming, and software development, these new entrepreneurs are poised to bridge the gender gap in agriculture, drive local job creation, and turn their training into sustainable businesses backed by continued mentorship and aligned with the National Akukon Kitinkiti Initiative. Anna Sabit has more.
It was a day of celebration and new beginnings in Techiman as a unique training initiative marked a major milestone. The Activate program, aimed at equipping the youth, especially women, with modern agricultural and digital skills, graduated its first 2 cohorts. Chief Executive Officer of Agrico Hub, George Anjibusiaku, says the move is a deliberate push to transform lives and reshape a key sector.
So today, we are graduating both the cohort 1 and 2, where the learners that have gone through the CBT, which is the competency-based training, are now being graduated to go and start their own businesses, either in software development, in cashew processing, or hatchery processing and marketing of poultry. And that is the essence of today's program.
The CEO also noted that the program is a direct response to youth unemployment and gender imbalance in agribusiness.
As we all know, women have been highly underrepresented in most of these agri-related areas. So we decided to, as per the program design, our partners decided that we should focus more on women so that we can get more women involved in agricultural TVET. These are areas that are mostly dominated by men, but we want the women to be more represented in it.
But the support doesn't end at graduation. Agrico Hub will continue to provide support to these young people to help them succeed.
Now we are moving them to a business development unit under the Agrico Business Clinic, where we are going to give them that onward support. Aside that, some of them, for instance, those who are into poultry, we are giving them day-old chicks. We have ensured that they have hand coop that they can put the day-old chick inside. We are also giving them the initial feed that they will need so that they can start their own poultry.
George also noted that the training perfectly aligns with the government's Akukon Kitinkiti program, creating that grassroots entrepreneurial ecosystem.
We want to do it in line with the government program, which is the Akukon Kitinkiti. So we are doing more of the training and then also training and then that capacity support. And I'm sure even government will want to partner with us to even train more of the youth.
For the graduates, the motivation was personal, but the vision is expansive.
I came to Agrico Hub to learn cashew processing. Yes, it was interesting. The class was very interesting because I learned from the farm work, the processing, and my aim and reasons is I am a fashion designer. Yes, I'm a fashion designer. I have apprenticed, but I wanted something to add up so that my community, I can give hand-in-hand businesses to the youth. I don't want to be alone, like struggling alone with the fashion, but then add more people to reduce the unemployment in Ghana.
I chose poultry among the other courses because I want to reduce the rate of import chickens and also add value, like let Ghanaians also have a feel of the organic chicken and not just the imported chicken alone.
The hope here is tangible. From software code to cashew value chains and poultry farms, these 120 graduates are armed with new skills. They carry the ambition not just for personal financial stability, but to become active players in Ghana's agricultural and digital revolution. Anna Sabit, Joy News, Techiman.
That's our package by way of Business Life for today. I am Pius Kujobaka. You can always get stories when you log on to myjoyonline.com/business. Thanks so much for your company.